In every war, the difference between life and death often came down to a soldier's ability to improvise. Not every battlefield was equipped, not every unit was supplied, and when gear ran out, those who survived were the ones who could create something from nothing. During World War II, this ability, what veterans later called scavenger survival, became an unspoken art form. It wasn't about luck. It was about resourcefulness, observation, and the determination to turn scrap into salvation. And while today's world runs on convenience, that forgotten skill still holds power. The methods those soldiers used to build tools from nothing can still help you survive any emergency, using only what's around you. So let's dig into how scavenger survival worked, the ingenious tools soldiers created in the field, and how you can apply the same principles to your own survival toolkit, even if you start with empty hands. One of the great myths of war is that armies are always well supplied. The reality on the ground was far more brutal. When the front shifted, when convoys were ambushed, or when weather made resupply impossible, soldiers were forced to rely on what they could find. Scavenging wasn't just desperation, it was a trained skill. Allied and Axis troops alike became experts at reclaiming, repurposing and re-engineering whatever lay around them. A broken canteen became a cookpot. A fragment of aircraft aluminum became a knife. Discarded wire turned into snares or bindings. In North Africa, men crafted shovels from tank track links. In the jungles of Burma, paratroopers stripped radio batteries to power improvised flashlights. Every object became potential material. And this was where the true art of scavenger survival was born, not as chaos, but as disciplined adaptation. Today, that same mindset applies when disaster strikes. Whether you're stranded after a flood, trapped during a blackout, or caught in the wilderness with nothing but debris, survival depends not on what you brought, but on what you recognize. Every piece of scrap has a second life if you know what to look for. Scavenger survival begins with seeing materials for what they can be, not what they were. During World War II, soldiers were trained to assess wreckage and terrain as potential resources. For instance, downed aircraft weren't just metal. They were stores of tools, wiring, glass and cloth. Parachute silk was used for bandages, shelter, even fishing line. The inner tubes of vehicles became water seals or slingshot bands. And those heavy ration tins, once empty, they became stoves, lanterns, or even water purifiers. The process was simple but deliberate. First, identify durable materials. Second, adapt them to immediate needs. Third, refine the result until it served its purpose. A discarded tin lid could be hammered flat on a rock and sharpened into a crude but effective cutting edge. Glass shards could be wrapped with cloth for a handle and used to process food or shape wood. Even mud and clay had their uses. When baked by fire, they became containers and insulation. These are not relics of the past. In any survival situation today, the same logic applies. When you find a piece of wire, it's not trash. It's a binding tool, a snare trigger, or a makeshift fishhook. Plastic bottles are not waste. They're flotation devices, funnels, or solar-still chambers. Scavenger survival teaches that every object has a second hidden function, if you look with the right eyes. Improvisation under pressure was truly the hallmark of World War II fieldcraft. The deeper you dive into wartime survival reports, the more you come to realize just how much soldiers relied on ingenuity rather than standard gear. In the frozen forests of Eastern Europe, Soviet partisans crafted axes by embedding sharpened railroad spikes into branches using strips of cloth to bind them tight. American GIs in the Pacific, well, they constructed signal mirrors from polished shell casings and mess kit lids. When ammunition ran low, some even used spring-loaded traps made from captured wire and wood to defend perimeters. But, these weren't just random acts of luck. They followed a clear survival logic, a need, a resource, and a transformation. Modern survivalists can follow the same pattern. For example, if you're caught in the wild and need fire but have no matches, Scavenger survival teaches you to look for steel, anything metallic that can create sparks against a stone, and fibres or cloth that can be charred into tinder. When shelter is needed, scavenging means using scrap plastic, bark, or discarded fabric to create a barrier against wind and rain. The principle hasn't aged, only the tools have changed. One of the most telling World War II examples came from the North African campaign. British soldiers running low on fuel learned to repurpose old oil tins into Benghazi burners, compact stoves made by stacking sand-soaked tins and pouring fuel through them. With this crude design, they could heat rations, purify water, and even signal aircraft, all built from discarded supply remnants. That single act of innovation became legendary across desert patrols and is still replicated by survivalists today. The mindset behind scavenger survival is what truly matters. Tools can break, supplies can run out, but mindset endures. That's what World War II soldiers understood. The art of scavenger survival isn't just about crafting. It's about refusing to freeze under pressure. It's about observation, patience, and action. In a survival scenario, panic blinds, calm improvisation saves. Start training this mindset by practicing repurposing ordinary objects. Next time something breaks at home, don't throw it away. Study how it's built and what parts could serve another function. Go on a hike and challenge yourself to identify 5 natural or man-made items that could be turned into survival tools. When you begin to think like a scavenger, the world stops looking empty. It starts looking useful. World War II field manuals even encouraged this thinking. Soldiers were taught that nothing is useless and that the enemy's trash is your arsenal. That idea remains timeless. Every piece of modern debris, from a soda can to a piece of foil, carries survival potential when combined with knowledge and creativity. How you can apply scavenger survival in modern emergencies. Whether facing a power outage, a vehicle breakdown far from help, or a trek gone wrong, the World War II scavenger approach remains one of the most valuable survival frameworks ever developed. You can apply it today by following the same sequence those soldiers lived by. Survey your surroundings, identify resources, repurpose them, and refine the result. If you're near urban debris, metal and plastic become your core materials. If you're in nature, wood, bone, and stone become your assets. Always think in terms of needs: fire, shelter, water, tools, and match materials accordingly. For instance, a broken bottleneck can cut and scrape, a rusted can can boil water, and wire stripped from an old device can hold or trap. None of this requires special equipment, only skill and awareness. The lost craft that still defines true survival. The forgotten art of scavenger survival isn't just a wartime story, it's proof of human adaptability at its highest level. Those who mastered it didn't just survive, they thrived when everything else failed. Today, With our dependence on technology and convenience, these lessons are more important than ever. Because when the batteries die, when the GPS goes dark, and when the world feels stripped bare, it's the scavenger, the one who can build tools from nothing, who endures. If you value real survival knowledge and the untold ingenuity that shaped history, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Valor for more lost wartime skills and forgotten fieldcraft wisdom. Share this with someone who believes true survival isn't about gear. It's about grit, knowledge, and the art of making something from nothing.